Zechariah chapter 9, verse 1. The message of the word of Yahweh against the land of Hadrach and Dameshech, its resting place. When the eye of man and all the tribes of Israel are on Yahweh. And Hamat also borders on it, Tzor and Sidon, though they are very wise. For Tzor built herself a tower, heaped up silver like the dust, and gold like the mud of the streets. Tzor, like I said, Yahweh speaks to Tzor in Ezekiel 28, and it refers to Satan, who wants to supplant the Messiah as a rock. So it's interesting what it says here because it is referring to what Halel did. Built herself a tower, heaped up silver like the dust, and gold like the mud of the streets. Remember that Satan deals with the money of this world. See, Yahweh shall dispossess her, and he shall strike her power in the sea, and she shall be consumed by fire. The consuming fire coming in the last days is talking about Tzor, which, like I said, the king of Tzor represented Halel, Lucifer, but it's talking about Tzor as a nation, and therefore speaks in the feminine, right? Saying her, she. So it also fits the great whore of Babylon, that rides the beast that is in the sea. And we see in Revelation 18 and 17 about how she will be destroyed, just in a similar way as we read here. See, Yahweh shall dispossess her, and he shall strike her power in the sea. So he shall strike the power of the great whore of Babylon in the nations, and she shall be consumed by fire. Ashkelon, you see how mentioned consumed by fire, and then he mentions Ashkelon, because Esh is the beginning of Ashkelon. Fire is the beginning of Ashkelon. Ashkelon sees it and fears. Azat too. So it is like saying that Yahweh punished the great whore of Babylon, and then Halel and Azazel feared, because they know that afterwards they are going into the lake of fire. Ashkelon sees it and fears Azat too. Written in anguish and Ekron, for her expectation has dried up, and the sovereign shall perish from Azat, and Ashkelon shall not be inhabited. And a mamzer and a mamzer shall settle in Ashdod, so I shall cut off the pride of the Philistines. They normally translate that as bastard, if I'm not mistaken. Verse 6. Yeah, bastard. Mamzer, child of incest, illegitimate child, bastard. So spiritual bastards. And a mamzer shall settle in Ashdod, so I shall cut off the pride of the Philistines. This is interesting as well, because remember that it was David who killed the pride of the Philistines when he killed Goliath, and many other times as well, in many ways. So how interesting that he mentioned, so I shall cut off the pride of the Philistines, just like David cut the head of Goliath, who was the pride of the Philistines at the moment. Right after he mentions the name Ashdod, which, like I mentioned, can be seen as the fire of David. And he mentions a mamzer, a bastard. Remember that David, for a while, he was called a bastard because they thought that he was an illegitimate child. That's why Yishai didn't call him when Shemuel came in and asked for his sons. And then after Shemuel saw that none of the sons that were brought to him were the one that Yahweh said, he said, do you have another one? And he said, oh, okay, David, I guess we can bring him as well. Because he didn't think that that was his son. He thought that his wife had been unfaithful. And the story is longer, but that's why David in Psalms says that he was conceived in sin because they were separated. His parents were separated at that time. So they would see that as sin, mainly because, well, when he, I didn't want to tell the whole story, but it is said that Yishai realized that he came from Ruth, and Ruth was from the tribe, I mean, from the nation of Moab. And there is a commandment that there cannot be a mix of Israel with Moab. However, it referred to not uniting yourself with the, well, pretty much a female uniting with a man from Moab. But Yishai, um, as being the man, had his wife from Israel, and he thought that it was sinful for her or forbidden for her to be with him. But then eventually he realized that the prohibition didn't fit him because he came from Ruth, who was a woman who married a Israel man. So when he had that issue in his faith and he thought that it was wrong for him to be married to his wife, he divorced her and he wanted to marry his servant. So he asked her to um, get with him. She didn't want to because she saw it as disrespectful to her um, sovereignness, pretty much David's mother. So she told her, and she acted as she was the servant. So she got in bed with him. He thought he was having sex with the servant. And then when his ex-wife was pregnant, they thought that she had been having sex outside of marriage. Um, so when they got back together, because he realized that he could be with her, she was already pregnant, and he thought that that baby was not his. So he always saw him as not his until the day that Shemuel came in and made him the king. He realized that he had to be his. um, so it's interesting that it says, and a mamzer shall settle in Ashdod, because it kind of refers to how they would see David. He wasn't a mamzer, but they would see him as that. So in a way, the same thing would happen with the last. For whatever reason, the same kind of thing will happen with the last. Mainly mamzer in the spirit, right? Like they will see him as a Gentile from the mixed nations, which we just saw is another translation of mamzer. They will see him as, well, for whatever reasons, as we will see eventually, many who are of the letter will see him as a mamzer, but that is the one that Yahweh would choose to be the fire of David. That's why a mamzer shall settle in Ashdod, Esh David. So I shall cut off the pride of the Philistines. So it mentions to cut off the pride of the Philistines right after mentioning the mamzer settling in Ashdod, right? So it's interesting. Obviously, I don't doubt there are negative interpretations of this verse by just seeing mamzer as a wicked, evil person, um, who is not even loved by his father or mighty one, who would settle in that place. So, like I said, there are several interpretations, but I did find interesting those connections with David and the word mamzer. And shall take away his blood from his mouth. So I shall cut off the pride of the Philistines and shall take away his blood from his mouth and the abominations from between his teeth. The abominations from between his teeth. You see how it mentions shall take away his blood from his mouth. Blood connects with sin, death, and the abominations from between his teeth, like the false Elohim that people invoke with their mouths. Remember that teeth represent change, represent consumption, represent fire, represent destruction as well. So you can give life or kill with the words of your mouth. And idols are abominations. So when you worship an idol through a false name, that is an abomination between your teeth. So that's why it says, and shall take away his blood from his mouth and the abominations from between his teeth. And he shall remain, even he, to our Elohim, and he shall be like a leader in Yehudah, and a kron like a Jebusite. Let me read from number 6, 6 and 7. And a bastard shall dwell in Ashdod, and I will cut off the pride of the Philistines, and I will take away his blood out of his mouth, and his abominations from between his teeth. But he that remaineth, even he shall be for our mighty one, and he shall be as a governor in Yehudah and Ekron and as a Jebusite. That's interesting because it kind of confirms the interpretation I was mentioning. Like I said, the last comes as the prodigal son. So the word mamzer will fit in that sense. I already mentioned the story of David, and he killed Goliath. Yahweh said that there was too much blood in his hands for him to be able to build the temple, that his son would do it. So it's interesting that after saying, and a mamzer shall settle in Ashdod, the fire of David. So I shall cut off, like the head of Goliath, the pride of the Philistines, and shall take away his blood from his mouth, as kind of saying from the mouth of the mamzer. He had blood in his mouth, but Yahweh will take it away, the sins, and the abominations from between his teeth, the false names, and he shall remain. Interesting. So even though he's a mamzer, even though he had blood in his mouth and abominations between his teeth, he shall remain, even he to our Elohim, and he shall be like a leader in Yehudah, and a kron, like a Jebusite. So very interesting because when David, exactly, when David entered Jerusalem and conquered it, it was called Yebus at that time. It was the place of the Jebusites. So like a Jebusite. So when he entered, it was like he was a Jebusite because he became the new king of that land. And he shall be like a leader in Yehudah. Oh, yeah, that was the word I wanted to leader. Caliph. Caliph. Like a leader, a first, a one, and also as an ox, we could say. And remember that the last comes as an ox. Yahushua came as the lamb. So then it says, and I shall encamp around my house against an army, against him who passes by and him who returns, so that no oppressor passes through them again. For now I have seen with my eyes. So wonderful. For now I have seen with my eyes. So two ways of seeing it. For I have already manifested as first and last. So right and left, his two eyes have seen everything, and now he will manifest his will. Also, the witnesses have a connection with eyes, right? They are supposed to see the events happening and testify. Witness in Hebrew is aid, which starts with the letter. Well, let me show you here real quick. Letter ayin, which is an eye. Ayin, eye, right? And letter ayin is an eye. But if we add the letter dalet, which is the door, we have witness. That's also until. But let's say if I put a dude, is going to say, oh, there you go, testimony, right? So you see that aid is the witness. And as you can see, the witness, what does he testify of? That he sees with his eye the door, which is Mashiach, who came in the fourth millennium. So they testify of Mashiach, the gate to the Father. So for now I have seen with my eyes. Beautiful. Also, this passes through. Let me go and see the verse once again. Hebrew real quick. Using the verb abar, to pass through, which is the root of Ibri, which is what is known as Hebrew. And I shall encamp around my house through his malach, as it is written, against an army, against him who passes by and him who returns. so that no oppressor passes through them again. For now I have seen with my eyes. So you see how it says through them again. So meaning that when this is actually fulfilled in the fullest extent, there won't be any enemy going through Israel. Yet that is not the case now, and it hasn't been the case kind of ever. So that means this still needs to be fulfilled, and it will, and we are closer than ever. So that no oppressor passes through them again. For now, I have seen with my eyes, because now first and last would have been manifested. Kiata, because now, Raiti, I see, Bay night, Bay night, with my eyes, plural, just in case. All right. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout, O daughter of Jerusalem. See, your sovereign is coming to you. He is righteous and endowed with deliverance, humble and riding on a donkey, a colt, the foal of a donkey. Wonderful, where we find this verse all of a sudden, because it confirms that what he was saying previously, like I mentioned, when he said that I would return, he actually did physically, because he entered in on a donkey, right? Yahushua HaMashiach, when he entered the tent of Aviv in Jerusalem, he entered Jerusalem on the 10th of Aviv on a donkey, fulfilling this verse right here in a literal sense. Remember that when one fulfills in the literal sense, the other one, the last, fulfills in the spiritual sense. What the last fulfills in the physical sense, Yahushua fulfilled already in the spiritual sense. So a donkey was an animal that was used by judges, by kings in that time. So Mashiach entered on a donkey because he came humble, also is another representation of a donkey, strong, and also in the negative, Gentile and dumb nowadays. But back in the day, it referred to strength, humility, judgment, and being noble, right? So Mashiach, as the king, enters on a donkey, fulfilling this verse. People, well, some people got it, others didn't. And that's why they killed him 4 days later. Well, on the 15th. So rejoice greatly, O daughter of Tzion, because now he's bringing the fulfillment of what he has been mentioning. In fact, how amazing that this verse appears where we read about the blood heir, right? And about the blessing that comes through him. And interesting, now that I think about it, Jewish people who do not accept Mashiach, they call him a mamzer, because they don't believe that he was born from a virgin. Of course, they believe that Miriam had a relationship with a Roman soldier, and they had sex, and then that's how, according to them, as they say, Yeshua was born. So to them, it is a mamzer. So how interesting that Yahushua or Yahweh is saying here, and a mamzer shall settle in Ashdod. So I shall cut off the pride of the Philistines. Just like through choosing us, he will cut off the pride of them, whoever they may be who stand against Yahweh. So, so I shall cut off the pride of the Philistines. Also interesting that a lot of people call Israel Palestine, which originally comes from the Philistines. And a lot of those who claim to be Jewish are closer to being Philistines, at least in when it comes to the spiritual sense and the meaning of the word Philistine. So very nice how it comes to this point when it says, "For now I have seen with my eyes." And actually, Yahushua came and saw with his eyes Jerusalem, and he cried over it, right? So rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Now, obviously, we could rejoice because salvation came, but at the same time, when he was entering Jerusalem, he entered to die. So if people knew what he had to go through, it would be a time to cry. My point with that is that they rejoiced in the literal sense, but they didn't know spiritually what was about to happen. Now in the spiritual sense, people should rejoice for what is coming. That is the transformation, second Exodus, entering eternity, etc. Um, so, and well, even though the two witnesses are going to be killed, so that part is going to be sad, but the gladness, the joy that comes right after and through the fulfillment of that will not compare to anything else. And remember that Yahushua left, and then there were 2,000 years of apostasy. The two witnesses leave, and there's only 3.5 years of plagues. So the death of the two witnesses will bring, no doubt, a lot of good things real quick. Obviously, through Yahushua. Want to make that clear. So verse 9, you see how it says Gili, Gili, rejoice. You see how this is a different verb than simcha, the noun simcha, and sason that we saw earlier. Gili is a third synonym of joy or rejoicing. And it's also the root of Galilee, where Mashiach lived, right? So interesting that he's referring to a prophecy of Yahushua HaMashiach. And he says, rejoice, but it can be seen as he will come and live in Galilee. Or also, there will be a repetition of this prophecy, because Gili also means circuit. So Gili Meod, rejoice greatly, Bat Tzion, daughter of Zion, or daughter of Sion. Hine Malkecha, behold, your king comes to you, righteous, Sadiq Venosha. Second, humble and riding on a donkey. All right, so yeah, very nice verse. Powerful, for it was already fulfilled. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Sion. Shout, O daughter of Jerusalem. See, your sovereign is coming to you. Your melech, your king is coming to you. And because of the fact that Yahushua came as the priest and to leave the priesthood and the kingship, or the kingdom, so that the last could come and receive the priesthood of Melchizedek, but as well become the king. So this verse right here, once again, I repeat, is for both manifestations. See, your king is coming to you. And I say that because I hope in the name of Yahushua that Yahweh is speaking to us at the moment, saying that the fulfillment of many things is coming very, very soon. As every time that we read, it connects with the timing we are at. But I hope the fulfillment of these words comes. So your sovereign is coming to you. He is righteous and endowed with deliverance. Humble and riding on a donkey, a colt, the foal of a donkey. And I shall cut off the chariot from Ephraim and the horse from Jerusalem. Meaning he will get rid of those, well, pretty much the army, because we won't need an army. We won't need to fight anymore or defend ourselves, because he will defend us if there was a need for it, which the last one will be at the end of the 1,000 years when Gog and Magog come against us. Yahweh will rain fire on them. So, and I shall cut off the chariot from Ephraim and the horse from Jerusalem. The chariot, in the spiritual sense, in the negative sense, connects to the worship of the sun god. And the horse also, but interestingly enough, horse in Hebrew is Zeus. He says the horse, right? Let me see. 10. I know it's kind of late. I'm almost done. 10. Vezus. Vezus sounds really similar to something, right? And well, they translated it as the horse, which would have been this way. Although I just saw it says the and horse, but
The horse.
Oh no, come on. I want to hear it in Hebrew.
Jesus.
All right, like Jesus in Spanish.
Jesus.
All right. So, and I shall cut off the chariot from Ephraim and the horse from Jerusalem. So the falsehood from the many and the falsehood from the few. Ephraim and Jerusalem representing many and few of those who believe in Yahweh. And the battle bow shall be cut off, and he shall speak peace to the nations. Interesting. The battle bow. Remember that the last comes to battle the enemy. He comes with a bow on a white horse, conquering and to conquer. But then everything that has to do with war will be over with because Yahweh, through the last, is bringing shalom, peace to the world. So the battle bow shall be cut off. And he, Yahweh, through Mashiach, first and last, shall speak peace to the nations. Right? Why? Because he just destroyed all the weapons. So remember also that the last who comes with a bow is the voice. In fact, the bow spiritually represents the voice itself because just like you throw an arrow, you can throw a word. And that's what the last does. Mashiach is the sword. That's why he's the word and the voice, sword and bow. So, and the battle bow shall be cut off, and he shall speak, because the voice, peace, shalom, the last, to the nations, finally, world peace. And his rule is from sea to sea, and from the river to the ends of the earth. The river representing the beginning of the earth, because remember that the river that became four rivers came out of paradise, and then to the ends of the world, of the ends of the earth. So from the beginning to the end, from one side to the other, he will rule over all the world. And remember that Yahushua came from Yahudah, who is the king of the tribes. The last comes from Yahusef, who became king of the nations. So that's why Yahushua says, and I will give him the rod of iron so that he rules the nations. Also you, because of the blood of your covenant. Interesting, because they would see it as, okay, so the blood that comes out when we do the circumcision. But Yahushua came as the one who is the seed, and they cut him off of this world. In fact, remember that Daniel 9 says Mashiach Nagid will appear. And let me read it real quick right here. Let me see how they translate. And after the 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off and have not. Messiah shall be cut off. He's the seed. He was cut off. It's interesting that what is cut off during circumcision is part of the flesh from the organ that puts the seed in the woman in order to give fruit, to give birth, right? So Mashiach came as the seed of the Father, and they cut him off. So he is the circumcision, the true circumcision of ear and heart is our belief in Mashiach in order to receive the Ruach HaKodesh. So the blood that Mashiach spilled on the cross was to save us, and that is the blood of the covenant, the new covenant prophesied by Yirmiyahu, right? So also you, because of the blood of your covenant. So now in our time, we understand speaking about the blood of Mashiach. Because of the blood of your covenant, and also it's interesting how Yahweh says your covenant, because depending on the person who reads it, they will understand a different covenant. Somebody who doesn't believe in Mashiach, they will think of the covenant of the Torah according to the letter, and most likely, like I said, circumcision. Because of the blood of your covenant, I shall send your prisoners out of the pit. Remember what? How wonderful. Out of the pit. Although there were, back in the day, many prisons were in a pit. So it fits. But remember that Sheol is the greatest pit of all and is a prison as well. Yahushua spoke a parable talking about hell as a prison. So I shall send your prisoners out of the pit. Something that they were expecting in the literal sense, and I'm sure it happened in a way. But in the spiritual sense, it's talking about how through the blood of Mashiach, the blood of our covenant, those who were in Sheol would be able to come out, meaning resurrect. Right? And remember when Mashiach read Isaiah 61 and they wanted to throw him off the cliff. He said, the spirit of the sovereign Yahweh is upon me because Yahweh has anointed me to bring good news to the meek. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim release to the captives and the opening of the prison to those who are bound. The opening of the prison to those who are bound. To proclaim the acceptable year of Yahweh. That's when he ended. And he said, this has been fulfilled today before your eyes. From then on represents the second manifestation. And the day of vengeance of our Elohim, to comfort all who mourn, to appoint unto those who mourn in Tzion, to give them embellishment for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. And they shall be called trees of righteousness, a planting of Yahweh to be adorned. The chosen few, the trees of Revelation 7, those who are sealed with the name of the Father and the Son. So you see how it says, and the opening of the prisons to those who are bound. Because of the blood of your covenant, and I shall send your prisoners out of the pit. That's what Mashiach came to do through the blood of his covenant. And he mentions the Sheol, where prisoners are the dead who will resurrect. Return to the stronghold, you prisoners of the expectation. I find that verse very interesting, depending on the translation. So return, Levitzaron, Asirim, Hatikva, prisoners of hope. You prisoners of the expectation. Just like there are prisoners in Sheol, prisoners in the sense that they cannot come out because they died. But they are expecting the resurrection. So they will be able to return to the stronghold. Returns pretty much, well, resurrection, the re in resurrection means pretty much return, right? Return to the world, to the reality of the living. So return to the stronghold, as in return to your bodies, you prisoners of the expectation of resurrection, you who are in Sheol expecting resurrection through the blood of the covenant. Even today I declare that I return double to you, the double portion through the first and last, many and few, this life and the next, etc., etc. Even today I declare that I return double to you, to the righteous and to the wicked as well. They will receive double portion of punishment. For I shall bend Yahudah for me. Remember that he just said that he broke the bow? Right? It said, where was it? And the battle bow shall be cut off. But after saying all of this, he says, for I shall bend Yahudah for me. I shall fill the bow with Ephraim, and I shall stir up your sons, O Tzion, against your sons, O Greece, and I shall make you like the sword of a mighty man. So, and I shall bend Yahudah for me. The last comes through Ephraim and possibly even through Yahudah. But just because the scripture mainly mentions the fact that the first comes from Yahudah and the last from Yosef, I'm not going to include the possibility that through the mixing of tribes, the last can actually have both tribes. But that's another story. Even three, like I have mentioned, Benjamin being one of them. But I'm just going to keep it simple. Yahudah and Yosef. But remember that in Yahushua, there is no Greek nor Yahudi. We are one. Galatians, Colossians, Romans says that. So in Mashiach, there's only Yahudim because he's a Yahudi. So we become him in the sense that Mashiach lives in us now. So the last comes as the son of Ephraim, who is a son of Joseph, but through Yahushua becomes the son of David, meaning from Yahudah. The last comes with a bow on a white horse, and he will fight the apostasy which came from Greece, which kind of has the many, well, the Christians, which mainly are the many, fooled with a false doctrine, sadly. So, for I shall bend Yahudah for me, I shall fill the bow with Ephraim, and I shall stir up your sons, O Tzion, against your sons, O Greece. The believers against the non-believers, the people of Israel against the nations, the few against the many. And I shall make you like the sword of a mighty man. If I shall make you refers to the same people of Yahweh who are as a bow, then it's saying the bow like the last, the sword like the first. You will be like mighty men. But if it is referring to Greece becoming like the sword of a mighty man, that will refer to first the bow being the first seal of revelation, the sword of a mighty man, the second seal of revelation. The last is the rider of the white horse with a bow. The beast that comes on the second horse with a sword to take away the peace from the world actually comes from one of the four parts in which Greece separated after Alexander the Great. The book of Daniel prophesies that the beast, the first beast, the little horn of Revelation 13 and Daniel, he will be a descendant of a nation from one of those four corners in which Greece separated. So the fact that it says here, O Greece, and I shall make you like the sword of a mighty man, kind of fits with first and second seal. The last and the world leader. The one sent by Yahweh, the one sent by the enemy. Then he says, and Yahweh shall appear for them. So how perfect that he just mentioned something that refers to the second manifestation of Yahweh on this earth with the bow on the white horse. That is in a spiritual image to understand that he comes to make a war with his voice, a spiritual war with his voice. The war represented by the horse, spiritual and positive by the white color of the horse, the bow referring to the voice and the teaching sent by that voice. The fact that it's a bow also refers to having to fight because of the falsehood of the world. So right after mentioning all of that in the verse 13, now it says, and Yahweh shall appear for them. So kind of says he will be on the world. He will appear. When somebody appears is when you actually see him, right? If you disappear is when they don't see you. So if you appear, they see you. My point is, he's basically saying, and you will see Yahweh, right? One of his manifestations, because he, in his highest, is obviously invisible. And Yahweh shall appear for them, and his arrow go forth like lightning, confirming that he's mentioning, referring to the last coming of on the white horse with the bow, right? Because he didn't say, and shall appear for them, and his sword, even though he could have, because his sword is Yahushua. But he's not talking about the first manifestation that already happened with the donkey previous verses before this one, a few verses before this one. So now he's talking about the second manifestation, and he says, and Yahweh shall appear for them, and his arrow, therefore he's the one with the bow, right? I hope that's understood, and it's very important. I know you guys have it really clear, but a lot of people in Christianity believe that the one with the bow is Satan, the Antichrist. And we see here that is Yahweh himself. In fact, I kind of want to add a little bit to the book, but just going to keep it like that. All right, so, and Yahweh shall appear for them, and his arrow go forth like lightning. Because remember that the lightning represents also the voice of Yahweh. Well, thunder is the voice of Yahweh. Lightning is a manifestation of the light that comes from the voice. The light is Yahushua, which is the word, right? So the light and thunder would be like the word and voice. And Yahushua spoke of the coming of the Son of Man, also like the lightning, although that was a wrong translation, but it referred to the splendor, the light of the sun coming from one side of the world to the other and giving light to the whole world. And Yahweh shall appear for them, and his arrow, his voice, his teaching, go forth like lightning. So giving light to everyone real quick, like lightning. And the sovereign Yahweh, sound with the shofar. Remember that the last is the archangel Michael, who comes with the voice of the trumpet, meaning as we read in Thessalonians, the trumpet referring to the last trumpet in which the chosen few will be transformed in the blinking of an eye. In the blink of an eye. All right, so very powerful verse. And Yahweh shall appear for them, and his arrow go forth like lightning, and the sovereign Yahweh sound with the shofar. And he shall go with whirlwinds from the south, right? Which the south represents the right hand, so meaning with righteousness, with Mashiach, who is at the right hand of the Father, and also represents blessing, and also winds. So the Ruach coming with blessing and teaching from the right hand of the Father, which is Yahushua. And well, you remember Thessalonians, right? About the For this we say to you by the word of the sovereign, that we, the living who are left over at the coming of the sovereign, shall in no way go before those who are asleep. Because the sovereign himself, as we just saw in Zechariah, he said that Yahweh shall appear, right? The sovereign himself shall come down, although this manifestation will be right after they already killed him again, right? Just in case, the two witnesses shall come down because he had gone up already from heaven with a shout, with the voice of a chief messenger. That is the voice of Yahweh, the chief messenger, Michael, and with the trumpet of Elohim, the shofar, meaning the seventh trumpet. And the dead in Messiah shall rise first. The dead in Messiah shall rise first. So, and the sovereign Yahweh sound with the shofar, and he shall go with whirlwinds from the south. Those whirlwinds being mentioned right after the shofar, and what we just saw in Thessalonians, point to the harvest, the transformation, like a wind coming around, taking everybody up, transforming everybody. Remember that Eliyahu was taken in a whirlwind, even though it was a chariot of fire, chariot with horses of fire. It was like a whirlwind when he went up. Same with Hanok. They are the two who went alive. So the 144,000 will be taken alive in those whirlwinds from the south, meaning from the right hand of the Father. So referring to the transformation that happens when the shofar, the seventh trumpet, is blown. Yahweh of hosts shall shield them, right? That fits perfectly with the whole thing. And like I said, I kind of want to add the whole chapter in the book because it says how Yahweh will take them, the chosen few, away in a whirlwind during the time of the seventh shofar, the seventh trumpet. In Revelation 12, they are taken to this prepared place where they will be sustained for 1,260 days. So Yahweh of hosts shall shield them. Yes, because Yahweh will take them to a prepared place, because Yahweh promised them that they would not go through the last trial that the whole world has to go through. So Yahweh of hosts shall shield them, and they shall devour and trample on sling stones. And they shall drink, roar as if with wine, and they shall be filled with like basins, like the corners of the slaughter place. This also connects with the fact that the evil ones will die, and then we will come after being 1,260 days in that place, eating and drinking and having fun with the Most High and with each other. Then we have the wedding of the Lamb, and then we come for the war of Harmegiddo. So they shall devour and trample on sling stones, and they shall drink, roar as if with wine, and they shall be filled with like basins, like the corners of the slaughter place. And Yahweh, their Elohim, shall save them in that day, as the flock in that day, the day of Yahweh, the day of the seventh trumpet, the day of the transformation. And then he will save us in Har Megiddo, and then he will save us in Gog and Magog. And Yahweh, their Elohim, shall save them in that day, as the flock of his people. Yahweh comes as the good shepherd to save the flock of his people. For the stones of a diadem sparkling over his land. For what goodness is his, and what comeliness is his. For what goodness is his, and what comeliness is his. Grain make the young men thrive, and new wine the maidens. This last verse. Goodness as in the last. Comeliness as in the first. His grain, remember, those are the few. Make the young men thrive. The few will be the heads. That's why they are connected to males. And the wine will be the many, the people. That's why they are connected to females. Male and female, few and many, grain and wine, as we see in Revelation 14, right? And just to close 17, it says, Ki ma tobo. You remember what we saw about ma? That represents the last. For what goodness? For what is his goodness? Ma tobo. The last, who is the ma, is also the good. Uma yafio, his comeliness. So once again, last and first. So I hope that was clear. It was a powerful, powerful chapter.